Mr. President, I'm on the floor today to discuss the Energy Savings and Industrial Competitiveness Act, which is why we call it Shaheen-Portman. It's a faster way to refer to it. But it's a bill that I co-authored with Senator Rob Portman from Ohio, and it represents more than 3 years of meetings, negotiations, compromise, and broad stakeholder outreach in an effort to craft the most effective piece of energy legislation with the greatest chance of passing both chambers of Congress and of being signed into law. And my partner in this effort, Senator Portman, was here on the floor last night talking about why this is a bipartisan bill that can pass not only this chamber, but the House and be signed into law. It is a bipartisan effort that reflects an affordable approach to boost the use of energy efficiency technologies in our economy. Efficiency is the cheapest, fastest way to reduce our energy use. Energy-saving techniques and technologies lower costs. They free up capital that allows businesses to expand and our economy to grow. This is, in addition to being an energy bill, a jobs bill. And we can start improving our efficiency now by installing ready, proven technologies, things like modern heating systems, computer-controlled thermostats, low-energy lighting. Efficiency is no longer about putting on a sweater and turning down the thermostat. It's about making use of these technologies that are available today. There are substantial opportunities that exist across all sectors of our economy that would allow us to conserve energy, to create good-paying private sector jobs, and to reduce pollution. Now, our bill reduces the barriers to efficiency in the major energy-consuming sectors of our economy. It does that through buildings, where we use about 40% of our use, through industrial efficiency, where we assist the manufacturing sector, which consumes more energy than any other sector of the U.S. economy. We help them implement energy-efficient production technologies. And through the federal government, which, as I think all of us know, is the single largest user of energy in the country. What the legislation does is encourages the federal government to adopt more efficient building standards, smart metering technology, to look at our data centers and see how we can reduce the cost there. And again, this bill will help create private sector jobs. It will save businesses and consumers money. It will reduce pollution, and it will make our country more energy efficient. A recent study by experts at the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy found that by 2030, Shaheen-Portman, if it passes, has the potential to create 192,000 domestic jobs, to save consumers and businesses over $16 billion a year, and to reduce carbon pollution by the equivalent of taking 22 million cars off the road. And the bill does this without any mandates, without raising the deficit. All authorizations are offset, and it even produces a $12 million deficit reduction, according to the Congressional Budget Office. I've had the opportunity over the last 3.5 years, as we've been working on this bill, to visit businesses across New Hampshire who are making use of energy-efficient technologies. And what I've heard from those businesses is that they've adopted these energy efficiencies because it allows them to save money. It allows them to be competitive. It allows them to add jobs in their sectors. I think that's why this legislation enjoys such strong support from industry, from trade associations, and from labor groups, as well as efficiency and environmental advocates. As the presiding officer knows, it's not often that we have groups like the National Association of Manufacturers and the National Wildlife Federation supporting the same piece of legislation. And I have, for the record, a number of letters that have been sent by many of these organizations that illustrate the ever-growing support for the bill. The signatures on these letters go on, and they're signed by everyone from the Edison Electric Institute, the American Gas Association, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, to Earth Day Network, and the National Association of State Energy Offices. At this time, Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent to introduce these letters into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. I think this non-traditional alliance clearly illustrates the sizable and diverse demand for this energy efficiency jobs bill. And simply put, the time is now for the Senate to take up and pass this bipartisan, common sense proposal to grow our economy and to create good-paying jobs for decades. And we can't let our extraneous debates about amendments or non-amendments, what amendments to include, which amendments not to include, to get in the way of getting this legislation done, because this creates jobs, it saves consumers money, and it saves on pollution. Now, one of the great things about the bill that I hope we're going to take up in a few minutes is that it includes 10 additional bipartisan amendments. And since our bill was taken up and then had to be pulled from the floor back in September, Senator Portman and I have worked closely with senators from both sides of the aisle to add 10 new bipartisan provisions that expand current sections of our bill. The new bill has a section that puts in place common sense and consensus-reached regulatory relief provisions that maintain the underlying principle of advancing energy efficiency in the private sector. And as a result of these provisions, the legislation has more energy savings, more job creation, and more carbon dioxide reductions than the previous version of the bill. So I wanted to just briefly, I know we don't have a lot of time, but to talk a little bit about some of those bipartisan amendments, because I think they point out the improvements in the legislation. One of those is Tenant Star, which builds on the success of EPA's long-running voluntary Energy Star program for commercial buildings, and it creates a similar tenant-oriented certification for leased spaces. Again, it's voluntary. Commercial building tenants who design, construct, and operate their leased spaces in ways that maximize energy efficiency would receive the same kind of public recognition through Tenant Star that Energy Star has produced for so many buildings and businesses. It also includes a provision for energy efficient schools. Senator Susan Collins and Mark Udall have an amendment included that will help schools boost energy efficiency and streamline the federal government's programs to make them run more productively. This would help schools across the country to finance energy efficiency projects and to make their buildings operate in a more sustainable fashion. The legislation also includes Senator Bennett and Senator Isaacson's amendment called the SAVE Act, which will improve the accuracy of mortgage underwriting by including energy efficiency as a factor in determining the value and affordability of homes. And it includes a proposal by Senators Hoeven and Pryor to create a regulatory exemption for thermal storage water heaters so that rural cooperatives and others can continue to use certain large water heaters for their successful demand response programs. Now, in addition to what's in this legislation, what we've seen in the last several months is that the House has passed energy efficiency legislation, including a number of the provisions that are in the bill we will be taking up today. In fact, the House recently passed an energy efficiency package by an overwhelming 375 to 36 margin. The provisions passed by the House are in the version that we're introducing of Shaheen-Portman, and it shows just how much support for energy efficiency that there is throughout the Congress. So we have a real opportunity to pass this legislation. This is a bipartisan, affordable, widely supported, and most important, effective first step to address our nation's very real energy needs. And I want to thank Senator Portman for his partnership in bringing the bill to the floor. I want to thank the majority and minority leaders, as well as the new Energy Chair, Senator Landrieu, and Ranking Member Murkowski for their support, and thank former Energy Chair and Natural Resources former Energy and Natural Resources Chairman Ron Wyden for his support, and I also want to thank the legislation's additional co-sponsors, Senators Ayotte, Bennett, Collins, Presiding Officer, Senator Coons, Senators Franken, Hoeven, Isaacson, Manchin, Warner, and Wicker. I think that list of bipartisan co-sponsors just indicates the breadth of support for this legislation. It shows the ideological breadth of support for it. And I look forward to working with Senate leadership, with all of my colleagues here in the Senate, because we can pass this legislation, we can create these jobs, we can save consumers money, and we can reduce pollution. Thank you very much, Mr. President.